Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network. For those who've been following the last couple months, as I've been investigating Bethany Christian Services and also starting to look at the more broad adoption industry in general, we're going to continue that dialogue. In coming weeks, we'll be having discussions about the international adoption industry and really how this is a worldwide problem that affects people from all different ethnicities, different backgrounds, etc. But today we're going to take a moment to hear a bit about the solution side of things. We're going to hear from Renee Gelin, who has been involved in this fight, I guess you could say, with an organization called Saving Our Sisters. She's going to tell us all about that, as well as her own personal story of dealing with this industry. So please welcome Renee to the show. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing?
Doing great, Derrick. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you making the time for us. I know you've got a lot going on. And as I said there in that intro, I've been going into this specific field of research. It's not something that I've been familiar with prior to this year. I've researched foster home stuff, CPS stuff, but not the adoption industry specifically. And as I said, I would love to hear the solutions that you've been promoting and the way you've been trying to help out mothers and parents who have dealt with the problems that I've been reporting on. But first, I know you have a story to tell, so I'd like to give you time to just share with everybody before we get into Saving Our Sisters, how you found yourself on this path in the first place.
Yeah. I honestly don't like to talk about my story too much just because of the fact that people tend to dismiss individual stories and say, oh, that's just that one agency, or, oh, that's just that one scenario and that one situation. But, like all others, I was a mom, a pregnant mom, expectant mom in crisis. And I literally just panicked. I didn't believe in myself. I had some fear. I had a business that had gone under in the 2008, 2009 timeframe, like so many things did. And I was buried in debt, was doing some contract work. So I had a really high risk, a high deductible insurance policy. And this was pre-Affordable Care Act. So there was no marketplace or any place to get insurance like that. And then I ended up pregnant, met my then boyfriend, now husband, and we got pregnant right away. And we had talked about kids. Everything was fine. But all of a sudden, my insurance started denying my prenatal claims, the stress of a new relationship, and quite frankly, the pregnancy, itself was extremely stressful. And single parenting as I was, I just panicked. And when I got real sick, I needed a prescription that the doctor wrote for me called Zofran. And she didn't write the generic, but she wrote Zofran itself. And I went to the drive-through to pick it up. And they said, well, you don't have insurance. And I said, yes, I know. And they said, well, that's going to be $600. And I, literally without that medication, could not get off the sofa. It was an illness called hyperemesis gravidarum, which is very common in expectant moms who are extremely stressed and, in crisis. So it was really tough. And so then I ended up basically reaching for the wrong help, doing the old Google search and trying to figure out, how I could, fix this and make sure that I, gave my child the best that he deserved. And next thing you know, I'm in the hospital signing relinquishment forms 72 hours after he was born. And that was it. So, and then, of course, promised an open adoption, which then closed. And I know you've heard a few stories like that. So at that point, I didn't really want to go through this with this. This was not something that was ideal for me. It was literally at a moment of complete vulnerability and just sheer desperation of, I don't know how I'm going to work, my job at 10, 12 hours a day, having somebody else watch my infant, watching my older child, and figuring out how to pay for everything. So, my issues were basically all I needed was somebody to say, calm down, take a breath, take your baby home. You're already a good mom. We'll help you figure it out. We'll help you find that childcare. We'll help you find, whatever it is that you need. And so here I am. I learned so many things in a very short period of time after that relinquishment. And it was a very, very rude awakening and extremely traumatic, to learn all of the things that happen in an infant adoption, and how, um, I was not informed of really my rights or what was going on. I didn't have an attorney. I didn't even know I should have an attorney. The agency basically was my friend, and they knew the process. So, similar story to kind of what you hear, and it's been a really rough road. It's really affected my family. My oldest was then 8, watching all of this unfold in front of her, and now we've gotten married and have another daughter, and she is looking for connecting with her sibling too, which we have no contact with. So it's a really tough life.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, Renee. And I know that these are difficult, traumatic experiences for many, many families. And this is something, unfortunately, that by now will be familiar to most of the audience who's been following along my investigation. And the, I guess, positive outcome of this, though, is that you, after your experience that you just described, you eventually meet another woman, Lisa, and you are both called to start trying to help other families, other mothers. Could you take us through that story and what led you to go from what you just described to trying to be more proactive about the problem?
Yeah, and basically what ends up happening in a lot of these scenarios is that there is just no support. There's no support for living through this and living through everything. And this was back when the internet was starting to take off as far as groups and social media and things like that, and a lot of people were blogging then. Still a lot of blogs around today, but Lisa and I connected through her blog, and she was about a year ahead of me in the process. And as I was reading her story, we were living a parallel life. She was in a different part of the country, and I'm here in Florida, and it was the fact that our two scenarios were so similar and so completely unnecessary that I just had to reach out to her and really connect with her, and that's what happened. And as we built our friendship, we ended up coming up with this solution, basically, that people need to know, especially expectant moms in crisis, that they should not be making these decisions at a time when they're in complete crisis, despair, disarray, and being overwhelmed. They need somebody that's actually going to help them. And so we came up with the idea that basically we're going to do and be exactly what we needed, and that is information, education on the process, and on the rights, really, and the lack of rights that a mom who relinquishes a child to adoption has, which she basically becomes a legal stranger to her child and has no input. So we just started reaching out and talking to people, and lo and behold, these pregnant moms started finding us, and we started having a lot of success, and started also connecting with a lot of the adoption community that's out there today. So there's a lot of first / birth moms that are out there, a lot of adoptees. And it's just blown up. This was not something we planned. We didn't plan to have a website, have a national organization, but obviously the need is there, and we're happy to be here to fill it.
And the organization Saving Our Sisters, you have now chapters in all 50 U.S. states. Is that accurate?
We have volunteers, so we don't actually have chapters. Yep, we just have a board. And we've got volunteers who actually register to help a mom in their area if SOS deems, that one is necessary, that they need a mentor. We have, unfortunately, a lot of cases that come to us too late. So a lot of moms, I know you've talked about this a little bit in some of your other parts that you've done, and the revocation periods are different in every single state. So adoption laws vary by every single state. Florida here has 0 revocation. So you can refinance your house and take 3 days and back out of it. But if you relinquish your rights to your baby who's under 6 months old, too bad, so sad. It's really shocking. Wow. And yeah, and so that's where we are trying to fill the gap and making sure that Our goal is that if somebody is going to relinquish the rights to their child, that they're doing it based on an informed decision. That is what our goal is. That's what we didn't have. I didn't know, for example, my son's birth certificate was going to be sealed and I would literally be erased, and that he would never be able to get it under Florida state statutes. So there are currently now 15 states in the country that allow adult adopted persons to get their birth certificate. And the adoptee organization rights are taking up that fight and working on that. But we're trying to do the front end and really prevent that, and really make sure that if a relinquishment happens, it's truly unnecessary. And the mom and dad, frankly, if he decides to relinquish, is making a fully informed decision.
So maybe you could walk us through the process a little bit. You mentioned that some people will reach out to you directly seeking help. For example, one of the things that I've been reporting is that Bethany Christian Services and organizations like them have partnerships, whatever you want to call them, with hospitals where, as you know, a mother comes in, and if she's got some questions or considering adoption or abortion, then they'll be presented with pamphlets and a counselor from one of these firms. Is there any way for SOS to be, I guess, similarly aligned with a hospital, where a parent comes in and again has questions, and instead of just getting the information from Bethany Christian Services or one of their colleagues, that they can learn from you guys?
Yeah, that actually is one of our goals, and we've put together some pamphlets together with a few organizations. One is called Concerned United Birth Parents. They've been around for about 50 years. They are also a nonprofit and one of the only birth parent run organizations like SOS is. And we have another pamphlet that we've put together with it's Adoption, Truth, and Transparency. And we've talked with a couple of those folks. And basically it's just, we need to get that information into the hospitals. Interestingly enough, a couple of weeks ago, one of our directors, Katie Burns, who is our resources director, and I attended the National Council for Adoption's annual conference in Fort Worth, Texas. And they specifically addressed building relationships with hospitals. It was in one of their sessions. That is their goal. They want to be educating the medical professionals on adoption and everything that goes with that. So generally what happens in a hospital is most adoption policy in hospitals are that the medical profession and the professionals are supposed to be a neutral party. They want to change that. So, the education that we do at SOS, many seem to believe that it is controversial, that we're anti-adoption and that type of thing. That is absolutely not the case. We don't want children to languish in abusive and neglectful homes. No one wants that. And so, again, it's all about just making sure that mom has informed consent, and our focus is on those, what we call, and I'm using air quotes, so-called voluntary relinquishments, where, she's overwhelmed and feeling that the best for her baby is strangers. And so, yeah, that is absolutely one of our goals. And we've actually had some hospitals reach out to us, not be able to, of course, disclose HIPAA information, but ask for information. And I've gone to multiple hospitals and dropped that off for the expectant parents who are considering.
Wow, that's really important and really great, because it does seem to be, from my limited knowledge and learning here in this area, that there is an immense amount of education and just around this whole topic. Of course, I think most average people who, if they hear anything about adoption, it's the assumption that the open adoptions are the best case scenario. Like you said, somebody being taken out of a home, or a dangerous, neglectful parent, or something like that. But as we're learning, that is not the case. That is not the typical case. In fact, it appears that there are more cases where mothers were promised open adoptions and various other promises that are not fulfilled. Could you speak to that briefly? Why do you think there is this maybe misunderstanding of the adoption industry, or just a lack of information, a lack of education on this?
Well, quite frankly, it all comes down to money. Ye who has the most money gets the most face time. They can get in front of people more. They have the ability to, travel and hold seminars and things. And at SOS, we're a grassroots organization. I have a full-time job. I've got, 2 kids, a husband, a family, and still trying to pay my bills. So, if I could make this my full-time gig, sure, I would definitely blow it up and make sure that things are changing a little bit quicker than they are. But, everybody really believes that adoption is about, saving a baby. You've got the pro-life movement that really puts abortion and adoption together. And, if you start just there, those are 2 completely separate decisions. One is a reproductive choice. The other is a parenting decision. They're made at completely separate times. You cannot relinquish your rights to your child until after your child is born, except for in 2 states. So there's a reason for that, because you don't know what you don't know. So again, those 2 things should not be in the same sentence. They're completely separate. And it's such a complicated and complex situation. And what I really, what we try to do is get people to think about what happened to that mom that she felt that giving her baby away, which by the way is completely against nature, right? What happened? What breakdown happened to make her so afraid or so overwhelmed or so fearful that she felt that giving her baby to strangers was good and was the right thing? We don't separate other animals, right? Puppies and kitties from their moms, because we know it causes lifelong issues, right? But when you put adoption in the conversation, it's immediate. Kansas, you can sign away your rights in 12 hours after you have a child. I mean, all logic, in our opinion, kind of goes out the window. And we really just want people to start and talk about and get back to child-centered discussions, right? So yes, there are multiple and millions of people looking to adopt children, but at what cost? Why are we breaking up families instead of helping them and making sure that if the separation happens, that it's truly necessary? That's really where the challenge comes in. And every time I, have a chance to kind of talk to people and really think about that, we're talking about moms who need less than $5,000. Went back in 2015 when we were starting, I helped moms with $500 to keep their child and navigate their crisis, get through having their baby, get through, their maternity leave, and successfully parent their kids. And now, with the cost of everything, I know everyone knows that, everything is more, rent is incredibly unaffordable right now. And housing is a major issue. So I'll talk a little bit, just 1 second, about the whole overturning and the Dobbs decision, right? A lot of people conflate those 2. And it was even said, right, in the leak that there will be more infants for adoption. But that's really, I think that's by design, honestly, because if you look at Gretchen Sisson's research that she did in the Turnaway study with, putting that abortion topic in there and seeing how many mothers were actually turned away from getting an abortion, what happened to those, how many did place, it was a minuscule number. So what's happening now is that you're taking that off the table and you're flooding the country with more parents and more children who need resources. But there's no money being put into resources. There's no initiative to talk about getting affordable housing. We're in Fort Worth a few weeks ago and heard on the news that San Antonio alone has 150,000 people on their wait list for housing. That's years long. And most of the states in this country have years long wait for housing. And that doesn't help, expectant moms. So we have a seriously broken system here in this country, and we are not supportive of families. And it's a very serious issue.
I appreciate you bringing up the abortion topic into the conversation. Although I know it's controversial, obviously, depending on people's perspective, hearing this, it does tie directly into the adoption as you're outlining there. And it's something I've tried to point out in some of my recent reports for those who might have an anti-abortion stance, or they support the Supreme Court decision, et cetera, to understand that if you care about life, that the taking away that option from mothers and keeping the babies alive, and then this whole problem we're discovering and researching and talking about here in the adoption industry, it doesn't necessarily guarantee better life outcomes. So for those who do care about life, it might be important to not only pay attention to making sure that babies get to live, but also to paying attention to how the adoption industry can still play into this. Because if a mother chooses to not have an abortion, she may choose to go to one of these firms and do an adoption. And as we've discussed, there's a lot of different problems and trauma that comes with that as well. So it clearly is a complex topic that we're not going to solve today, but I do appreciate you bringing in that nuance there and helping us understand that better. Could you share a little bit more about the how people can find you? I know you have an online website, you have social media. How can people get involved? How can they support if they are, just as concerned as you and I are about this, and they want to take a bigger role?
Yeah, we would love to have you find us. Our website is savingoursistersadoption.org. And we've got a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/adoptionsos. And we've got a TikTok page that we're actually recapping the National Council for Adoption Conference right now as well. So we're kind of giving some insights into some of the sessions that we went to, which, happened to really do a lot of focus on trauma. And I could go back into how kind of the industry it has morphed over the years, right? We talked a little bit about the baby scoop era. I know you talked to Catherine Joyce a little bit about that as well. And so what ended up happening, back at the tail end of the baby scoop era was they realized that, there weren't that many infants being available for adoption. So they morphed. They morphed into putting together what we now know is open adoption, and said, oh, this is the way to go, and we're going to do that now. Well, what's happening now is the numbers are still dwindling. So now what they're doing is saying, oh, yes, we realize that there is trauma. There's trauma in maternal separation. Now what we as the adoption industry needs to do, and adoption professionals, we should be providing lifelong support. If adoption is a better life, why is there a need for lifelong support? The moms that we deal with and help through their temporary crisis, we'll stay around with them for as long as they want. And some of them I've been friends with them for 13 years, but it's a temporary thing. They just need to get through their crisis, and they figure it out and they move on and they end up successfully parenting. So what the industry now is doing is building an entire industry on therapy. Think about that. They need to keep the revenue going. And the other thing that's happening is that a lot of these agencies and a lot of these adoption entities, including adoption attorneys and social workers, they're morphing into becoming licensed foster care placements. So because there are not enough infants, they've got to keep that money coming in. So they go out and get licensed to do foster care placements, and they partner with the states who are overwhelmed, as we know, right? So we've got another issue now. And the other part of that is they're also being awarded grant money that the federal government awards to states through that CPS, DCFS system, Title IV funding, that is supposed to be given to resources. Well, you're putting that, and they're winning these contracts in the hands of people who have zero vested interest in supporting families, but separating them. So there's a lot going on right now, and there's a big onion to peel. And I know you've got your work cut out, and we greatly appreciate it, because we've been doing this for 13 years, and it's been a very serious uphill battle.
Yeah, I'm learning that as the further I could dive into this and talk with folks like yourself, and trying to inform and educate my audience here to really understand this as well, that we have all been misinformed, I think, about how the adoption agencies work and how the outcomes usually go. And I think that is really telling that you just outlined there, that the industry has to talk about now not only shifting the goalposts of where we have less children, let's focus on this area, but admitting that therapy is needed for potentially a lifetime for people who are dealing with these circumstances. Every single parent and family that I spoke with in doing my reporting has experienced some level of trauma. In the best cases, they were able to reconnect and reconcile with their children and have some sort of relationship. And in the other cases, it was very traumatic and continues to be to this day. So I could see why therapy would be a need, but you would assume in a situation maybe where people were actually after better outcomes and not just motivated by financial profit, they would probably take a better look at their industry and say, look, if we have people who are needing lifelong therapy, maybe we're doing something wrong. But that doesn't seem to be taking place right now.
You're exactly right. And I sit in these sessions and just shake my head. And I don't understand how there's such a disconnect, because it's pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time with me today, Renee. Renee, do you have any closing thoughts for everyone? Again, I'll put the website and all the links below where everybody can follow you on social media and check out the website. And I do encourage anyone who feels very passionate about this topic to reach out to offer whatever support you might be able to. But yeah, any closing thoughts you'd like to leave us with, Renee?
Yeah, just really, what we really are aiming to do here is and we want to help you put a critical lens on this industry. Everybody, has the happy, sunshiny rainbow stories of adoption, but we really need to peel that onion, take those rose-colored glasses off, and really look through that critical lens and say, are we doing this right, or could we do it better? And if you look at the other countries around the globe, they're doing it better. They haven't turned it into an industry like the U.S. has.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think that's another important point to leave it on, is to really think about this beyond the United States. This might be another instance where the US, for one reason or another, is just doing things the wrong way, and there are better models that could be used. And we need to, and this is part of my job, diving into why that's not being done and what sort of motivations and who benefits from keeping the situation as is. Thank you so much for your time, Renee, and for sharing, for all the work that you and your partners and your colleagues have been doing in this. I really do appreciate it. And I know the mothers that I've spoken to are grateful for resources like yourself. That's how I learned about what you're doing, is through parents who've, I think, worked with you directly in some ways. So thank you for all that. Everyone, please check out the website, follow them on social media, spread the word. Our pursuit here is truth, and sometimes we have to look into dark areas in order to make sure that change can actually come about. We have to face the truth in order to help something better outcomes be achieved. So thank you for following me on this journey. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.